Let's welcome our NBA insider, Ian Begley. Ian, first of all, what do you make of the timing of this decision? I mean, Friday, 3:30, he coached the practice. It seemed like, where did this come from, Ian?
I have no idea about the timing of this thing. You know how bad the game was last night, right? You already have that evidence. So what else did you need to see to come to this decision? And then to have him coach a practice, speak to the media, talk about potential lineup changes that he was going to make for the Indiana game on Saturday, and then to fire him, I don't get it. I was told that some players had left the facility already and had heard by phone the news that Fizdale was out, but just the timing of the thing is bizarre. I mean, we have video of him shaking hands with Mills and Perry and other members of the front office after that practice, and then he gets fired?
Doesn't make any sense, but it makes sense when you think about it because it falls in line with what the Knicks have done here over the last 20 years. I just asked Hein this, Ian, I'll ask you, what percentage of the blame would you put on David Fizdale here? You think he lost the Knicks locker room? I mean, how much blame should he get?
Well, based on the last couple of games, it seemed pretty clear that the players weren't fully bought in for him. They had kind of let go of the rope. But I'm putting it at maybe 20% for him. He'd certainly deserves his share of the blame. You can't absolve him of blame, but he didn't put this roster together. He didn't create those big expectations this summer based on the Kristaps Porzingis trade, clearing cap space to get 2 max slots and then failing in free agency. That was Steve Mills. And it was Scott Perry. Well, one thing I'll say about Scott Perry is since Scott came on, take this summer and missing out on those big guys, yes, that hurts, but take it out of the equation for a second. He's left the Knicks in pretty good shape as far as keeping their books clean and keeping all their first-round picks intact. But I think so much of this goes upstairs to Mills and Perry because of the moves that have been made to give Fizdale this roster. Again, the roster's better than 4-18, so you lay some blame at the coach, but certainly not a lion's share of blame goes with the head coach in my mind.
I agree with you, Ian, and I understand how Perry got the books all set and, didn't give up the future. That's all well and good. But I want to know when you think this decision was actually made and who's the one who made the decision. Does it point to the top? Because, as you said, they're shaking hands. Today seemed to come like a surprise, yet we know this team has been struggling and been blown out all week long.
I do know after that game last night that Jim Dolan was in the executive suite. I assume he was in there with Steve Mills and Scott Perry having a conversation. What exactly was said there, I'm not sure. I would imagine it had to do with the head coach. But as far as who made the call, I was told weeks ago that if David Fizdale was going to be let go, it was going to be Steve Mills' decision. Obviously, any NBA owner signs off on a decision like this, so I'm sure Jim Dolan signed off on it. But let's be clear, based on what I had heard, it was going to be Mills' call. So I assume ultimately this was Steve Mills' call to get rid of David Fizdale, and now the spotlight turns to Mills and Scott Perry.
Yeah, and that's all that Knicks fans can hope at this point, Ian, is that those two get fired because it doesn't matter if they don't. You think they get a chance here to hire the next head coach, obviously outside of the interim Mike Miller? You think that Mills and Perry will be given another chance here to hire the next head coach?
I think it depends on what happens the rest of the season. Remember that the day after they held that impromptu press conference that put David Fizdale on notice, there was a conversation between Jim Dolan and Mills and maybe other people with management. And the management came away from that conversation thinking that they would be safe, their jobs would be okay if they were able to show progress. I don't know how you define progress, but I know we haven't seen it yet. So it's about the interim head coach, Mike Miller, getting the troops together, getting the Knicks to be more competitive, win some more games. I think at that point, if you're Mills and you're Perry, you then say to Jim Dolan and whoever else is making the call up there that, listen, this roster wasn't as bad as it showed under David Fizdale. Look at what we've done since then. But if there's no progress, you continue to get blown out, all bets are off. I think these guys are being judged based on what happens here on out as far as if they get to hire this next head coach or if it's somebody else.